mentioned about becoming politically aware about a year or two ago. And what was that in response to Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I would say I've always been politically aware. I've just not necessarily been politically active.
Right.
You know, when we were kind of growing up, obviously both my parents were activists back in the day. You know, I remember there's loads of pictures of me doing like leaflets on campaigns for them, like in the town centre, like where I used to grow up and stuff. So I think that on an unconscious level, I've always been involved. And then obviously getting involved with like the Tony Blair, there was the anti-Iraq war protest that happened in Taunton. I think that I was probably about 10 at that point, and that was kind of like a really influential moment for me. I was really impassioned by it, and decided to write Tony Blair a letter. He wrote back, but it was probably his secretary, but I got to have like a little picture of me in the newspaper, and I think that kind of started pushing me on to kind of be like, yeah, I can totally do something. And then life just kind of gets in the way, doesn't it? And you just, I think that it's almost too much sometimes to care, and it's so much easier to just revert back, switch off, get on with life. And I think that's pretty much what happened. But I always kept tabs with what was kind of happening in the world and within the country and things. I would always make sure that I voted once I was able to kind of vote. You know, took part in climate change protests, so G20, 1 million women march as well, so that was women's rights. That was amazing. I was probably about 13 or 14 at that point. And it was incredible walking through the streets of London with so many amazing women. But the amount of hate you get, the amount of hate, and it was not just from like men, it was some women like just, you know, just making snide remarks and stuff. And it was, yeah, really a bit of an eye-opener. It was such an amazing day. So, you know, I've always tried to get to like big demos and things. But again, like I said, like, you know, life just kind of gets in the way. So I've been politically active, I'd say, since last year with Black Lives Matter, 100%.
But grown up as an activist by the sounds of things, yeah.
Totally, totally. I have a big thing for fairness. I think it's I think it's like to do with how I grew up. I think sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't, if that makes sense. Like, you know, I think I always the home life that I had growing up and the challenges that I faced when I was growing up within the family, within the kind of direct environment and things, I think they've definitely shaped me and molded me to have a certain set of values, and they are very deeply rooted in honesty, fairness, and justice. So I think that as someone who has those kinds of values, I think you do very much struggle in day-to-day life when you see things. You know, I feel like when it comes to all of these different social justice movements, especially looking at climate change, looking at XR, looking at things like Greenpeace and stuff, you know, I was active as a member for Greenpeace, but I think when you look at those kind of environmental movements, sometimes they feel too big. You know, you feel like the whole weight of the world is hanging on your shoulders, and you're the only person or you're the only group who's fighting to do something. And it can become very exhausting because it's almost like, you know, the job at hand is such a massive job at hand. And I know that we all like to think in a way that we can do our little daily things and it will make a difference. And it probably does make a difference. It's better than doing nothing. But I think sometimes when you're having a rough time and you're thinking, yeah, but is me recycling this bottle and going kind of waste free really doing anything, you know? And I think that I dropped off from that. I think I was really struggling with that. And I think that's why I say to people now, it's like, pick a cause and stick to it, because the thing is that like BLM is mine, like racism, race equality is definitely like my cause, but it doesn't mean I don't care any less about the other causes. It just means that on this one I'm happy to spearhead it, and then the other ones I'm happy, invite me along, I'll be an ally, you know, all the way. And that means that it's like I'm still there, it's just I don't have this pressure. Like, you want me to show up, you want me to sign something, you want me to post something, I'll do that. You know, again, if you're demonstrating or whatever, I'll be there. But, you know, I think that's probably the best way I can probably explain it.
So we've talked before about being kind of a woman leading protests. Do you think that people do take you seriously or less seriously as a woman?
I feel that because in a way we have this privilege for once, which is like intersectionality. If I
Mm.
was just a woman within a normal group of people, I would say no, I would totally be treated differently. But what
Mm.
I've noticed that I think because we're using the Black Lives Matter platform as
Mm.
women of color, people understand that they don't have the same insights, that being from the woman of color part. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So therefore, if someone did want to treat me differently as a woman, they wouldn't necessarily be able to do it, because you're not only going to be targeting a woman in this case, you're going to be
Mm.
targeting a woman of color. And at the moment, you know, as we can see, big push to protect women of color and men of color, like, you know, so
Mm.
it's, you know, you be getting yourself into a lot of trouble. I think that a lot of the times that I've kind of encountered being spoken to differently in the sense of being treated differently because I'm a woman, it's mostly the whole mansplaining racism thing to me, because again, I'm quite racially ambiguous. I think people
Mm.
see me as a white person, so therefore, as a white person, I'm therefore just a woman, right? So
Yeah.
therefore they feel more comfortable to start mansplaining stuff to me. And it's not until I kind of have to put my foot down, and it's not just like, you know, within the realms of men, I think it's the realms of all people. When they see me, they're not getting a visual representation of what they believe. This is what
Yeah.
I feel, is they're not getting that representation of a black person in front of them. So
Mm.
therefore, just the same way you would change your behavior with ABC person, that wasn't about the LGBT, I mean, like, literally
Yeah.
person A, person B, person C.
Mm.
Okay. Like, you know, just the way you change your behavior slightly, you know, you're talking to an old
Mm.
lady, you're going to talk like this. If you're talking to someone who's transgender, you're going to probably talk a little bit different, a black person, an Asian person, etc.
Mm.
So I think that they're not getting that visual stimulus, like that visual
Yeah.
kind of thing of being a black person. So they drop their guard.
Mm.
And then it's when they want to talk over me. It's when if I have an opinion that actually is supposed to count, that
Mm.
they forget this. And this has happened a lot since Emma's left. Obviously she'll be back, but
Mm.
because they were getting a visual representation of a person of color. I'm not a
Right.
standard person of color. So I feel
Mm.
like I've seen loads of things on TikTok where they're saying that like white mixed people are basically like double agents for the black community, which I love. I love it. But like spies, because I'm not even joking. It's so true. Like I'll like things will be said to me, and I'll go straight back to my friends that are black or like my family members, and I'll just be like, oh, "You won't believe what this person said to me the other day," and they're just like, "What?" Like, you know. So in a way, I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things. But I'll definitely
Yeah.
say that people tend to want to step over me a little bit more now. They don't necessarily see my opinion as being a valid opinion anymore.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to be more assertive with myself. But the thing is I'm not great with control. I'm already a very direct person, but I've had to soften myself. But
Mm.
now what's happened is by trying to hold both of, be soft, delicate, and diplomatic, and then there's direct Vienna, what happens is I almost kind of blurt out, ah, and then I'm like, be extra, extra nice, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just had
Mm.
to go at that person, kind of thing. Because you do feel bad for asserting yourself, I find. Like, I feel very
Mm.
nervous. And yeah, you know, again, men that I encounter do not feel nervous about holding any form of opinion at all, you know, and they're not necessarily brought up on it, you know?
Yeah. Mm. And so you've got so obviously you've got men in your team at Black Lives Matter. Um, are you well? I suppose the first thing is, are you new to managing people? Have you managed people before? Because that in itself is, well, you know, some people love it, some people hate it, some people get a lot from it, but it's a whole other range of skills, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a Capricorn. Not that means anything, but
Oh, so am I.
dictator comes to mind, and micromanager, super organized. I'm none of those. I have had experience managing teams, but they've been very, very small teams. I'm very
Mm.
kind of like, anyway, I'm a very, how are people, I'm a bossy person. I'm
Yeah.
bossy, I'm opinionated. You know, I give out unsolicited advice any chance I get. You know, I'm a good people person though. I'm a good people person. I think it's for me, I'm kind of like the visionary. Like I will have the vision of what I want, and then Emily always kind of filled in the gaps and was like, this is how we'll do it.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm having to, that's been a massive struggle with the team. Also, like, massive imposter syndrome. Like, you know, I don't know these people. They don't necessarily know me. You know, I feel like I'm a very light-hearted person. Also, hashtag because of child trauma. But, like, I laugh a lot. So the thing is that I feel like people don't necessarily take me seriously.
Yeah.
And I get really concerned that people either think that I'm uneducated, they don't take me seriously. Obviously, with imposter syndrome, I just look around and I'm like, how did you even get here? You faked it all the way. Like, your life is a lie. You don't deserve to be here. And it's like all of this is happening. And it's just kind of like then being face to face with kind of organizing people. And it's kind of, I think, how to kind of deal with different personalities and things and the dynamics within the team. I would definitely say I've been blessed to not necessarily have too many or any issues. Everyone's done what they said they were going to do. I think that this time I've really kind of prepared myself mentally and kind of calculated that if this steward doesn't turn up, where's it? So I've come up with lots of plans, you know what I mean? So if this person doesn't do their job, then, you know, so I haven't almost delegated tasks that I solely rely upon someone to do. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if that's because, again, I'm just so used to doing things on my own anyway, that I don't like relying on people. It's a thing that I think, again, I don't know, is that a woman thing? Like, I feel like I'm very proud to be independent.
You know, there is a real balance there, isn't there, from you know, it's Black Lives Matter Taunton, and then anything that anyone does is a reflection of Black Lives Matter Taunton, which is really, you know, well, anxiety inducing, isn't it? Because it's bad enough if they work for you and they reflect your company or organisation or whatever, because you've got processes and there's employment law and there's all things to protect them and to protect you, but you're all just joined by the same cause, and you have to trust. Yeah, I suppose you have to trust them to not mess it up.
And it's such a controversial cause. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. And it upsets me so much that it's such a controversial topic to bring up. And I think because of that, we're all so hyper vigilant to make sure that, you know, what we're doing is the right thing. Make sure that when we're doing a protest, every single I has been dotted and T has been crossed, or however that saying works, I don't know. But, you know, make sure everything is done to such a standard that from an optics point of view, we aren't seen as being irresponsible. We're fighting against that stereotype at the moment, and it's so exhausting. And it's exhausting because it's yet another stereotype that the Black community has to fight against. Like yet another stereotype. And so when people come along thinking, oh, it's going to be a laugh, oh, we're going to shout this, or we're going to do this, or we're going to have a go at this heckler, and we're going to do this, they forget that it reflects upon Black people. It reflects upon Black Lives Matter. And, you know, I'm very like stern when it comes to the stewards. I'm like, you know, you need to make sure that you are out here. Your opinions are your opinions. But while you're representing Black Lives Matter, your opinions are Black Lives Matter opinions.
So you had a protest last weekend.
Yes.
And can we say that you've got another one coming? I suppose we can, can't we?
Yes, save the date. Save the date, Saturday the 17th.
And that's around Kill the Bill protests.
Yes.
Do you think there's a challenge to doing these kinds of things in a place like Taunton? Because we see all the big city protests, but I've also seen there was like a little protest in Wigan, which was really nice to see, a Kill the Bill one. And I saw it because somebody's dad had gone, you know, and they shared it. But trying to get, you know, they're not traditionally politically active places, are they? So do you find that a challenge?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that you're dealing with a lot of outdated ideologies when it comes to this. A lot of small towns don't tend to be as progressive as the big cities, and even the big cities struggle to be progressive.
Yeah.
And I think that you're dealing with that. I think you're dealing with the fact that, again, with those kind of outdated belief systems that people have, also take into consideration that most people in these areas don't necessarily have exposure to big
Mm.
city demos. They don't have big city ideas, big city living. So
Yeah.
they're kind of steadily fed this diet of kind of radio, TV, movies,
Mm.
whatever's in the magazines and things, and that's pretty much their exposure, and especially for
Yeah.
things like this, for Black Lives Matter, again, it's like people in these areas aren't exposed to seeing
Mm.
Black people on their streets every day, to see Muslims on their streets every day, to see lots of people from the LGBT. Do you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that that's a massive challenge as well, because you're dealing with a lot of hate. You're making people feel uncomfortable, you're making them feel annoyed, you're becoming a
Mm.
nuisance, and you're impeding on their day-to-day life. And a lot of the small towns tend to be like this anyway. If you make too much noise, I shouted out my window the other day to my next door, and everyone was like, what are you doing? And it's, if you make too much noise, people become very hateful and become very, very hurtful. And it's because it's from fear. Everything they have is from fear. It's that
Mm.
whole like analogy that's like, if you see a spider, the spider's living its life, right? But the thing is that you feel fearful of the spider. So then you want the spider to just disappear, right?
Yeah.
So then you start to hate the spider because you're like, I hate you. You make me feel scared, and I'm a human and I don't like to feel scared. And then you destroy the spider because humans destroy things that they're scared of. It's as simple as
Mm.
that. And that is so like concentrated in all of these little towns. Also,
Mm.
it's like, as I mentioned earlier, we were slightly the laughing stock, the laughing stock of Taunton, because we had such small numbers. And, the thing is, I spoke to another group, and we said, but in the ecosystem of protests and demos and
Mm.
movements, those people who are, my first ever protest was in Taunton, and that
Mm.
spurred me on. It was safe, where families can come. On Saturday we had kids with chalk. They were chalking up dragons and Kill the Bill and
Mm.
things like that. It's a safe space. It's quiet. There's not a lot of police presence. You
Yeah.
don't really tend to, unless it's like a BLM, get that many hecklers. But even still,
Mm.
it's still relatively safe. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's a great way to get kids involved directly within their community. And
Mm.
actually, it's like, I'm proud of that. And having places like Wigan, I know Barnstaple did one, like all of these small
Mm.
places, the more they do it, the more, this is where the focus needs to be, because
Yeah.
actually, we serve our purpose in the demonstration ecosystem. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that's kind of like pretty awesome, but
Mm.
I think as well, people don't really want to educate themselves on anything in these areas. And, I thought very much seeing us come up on the official Kill the Bill Instagram, because they've been posting everyone's protest, and it's a
Yeah.
claim to fame. It's a claim
Mm.
in the sense of like, yes, I'm doing something for Taunton that isn't to
Mm.
do with farming or new housing developments or anything like
Yeah.
that. Like, Taunton's there, and then they made an interactive map on another group. So then there was like Taunton on this interactive map, and in the statement they said about BLM Taunton, it was the first. It was the first bit, and I was like, yes. And again, it kind of like I said to them, I said, you need to keep the small towns in there, because the
Mm.
thing is that makes us feel so proud. And it also means like, look, folks, we got noticed by the cities. The more you get noticed by, and I know
Yeah.
it sounds really childish, but I just think it's so important for these small
Mm.
towns to feel empowered and know that they can do something, even if they have small numbers. They can make a difference, and they're noticed.
Mm. Because it shows everybody else as well. There's people in Taunton that care about this. Because you
Yes,
are from Taunton, you live in Taunton. You are a reflection of the people in Taunton. So, it's
absolutely.
not like you've come from outside to do a protest there.
No.
Um, and I think especially with Kill the Bill, it shows that like actually this is a thing. You would look and go, oh, so people who live in Somerset, which isn't known for ethnic diversity, civil rights, particularly or anything. people there care about this. And if it's just at the cities, it's a bit, you can dismiss it as the kind of the liberal elite, or just kids or whatever. But if Wigan can turn out for a Kill the Bill protest, then everywhere should.
Yeah, when people would say to Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, and I said to the team on Saturday, I really wanted to do an All Lives Matter chant, and they were like, because I have crazy ideas sometimes, and I was like, no, but we are just the same as almost the Black community took back words that were theirs, right?
Yeah.
And we all know what words they are. Is the same way doing All Lives Matter, us claiming that word as us. Because the thing is that Kill the Bill against the police crime sentencing courts bill. The thing about it is it affects every community.
Yeah.
And those who are out at the moment protesting to stop the bill from going through, those are true All Lives Matter people. Like those are the true All Lives Matter, because we already knew that All Lives Matter was a racist rebuttal to Black Lives Matter. It's as simple as that. And the thing is like I really wanted to like reclaim that and be like, no, because we're the one who are out here, giving voices to the climate, giving voices to marginalized communities, giving voices to women, giving voices to like the LGBTQ plus community. Like we're out here giving voices to these people. The GRT community that's going to be so highly affected by this bill. They're going to have their vehicles and their homes taken away from them. They're going to have like fines because if they're parked up in the wrong place. No one's talking about that. And the GRT community is something that they've been ostracized, even still now, even what, like, you know what I mean, on the same level, like, and it's just like, but only it's acceptable to belittle and use disgusting, hateful words towards the GRT community. It's normalized, like it's normalized to this crazy level that it's okay to be like that. It's okay to have these stereotypes, and the thing is like they're part of our community as well, and I think again it's like, and we have a lot of like Gypsy Romany travelers coming through Somerset all the time, on their ways to where they have to go. We have got fields upon fields upon fields, and if anyone is going to fight for the rights for that, these rural areas really need to be pushing that. And I think the only way we can, the challenges that I mentioned, like before that, about having to deal with kind of this hate and these outdated, everything in rural areas is just like 10, 15 years behind. But they'll never admit it. They'll always think that they're progressive. They'll always think they're being open and welcoming. And I think that if the small towns can just work to just overcome that by just constantly showing up, showing out, that's the only way. You don't have to be violent. Someone said to me the other day, oh, well, you've hidden your profile picture and all of this stuff, you're a troll. And I said, no, I'm having to be, they said, why do you worry about anonymity if you're not doing anything wrong? And I'm like, this is on the case right now. All of your comments are based on the fact I've told you it will be a peaceful protest. The history in our area for protests have been peaceful. So you have nothing to go on, right? Yeah. Just facts upon facts. Like, we have always proven that we will be peaceful. And if you think, and I'm telling you that we're going to have a peaceful protest and you're being this hateful, I had someone they were PMing me and everything, and they're just worse words. And I said to him, for our safety, you're really horrible people. I said, I don't want you to know who I am. And then they were just like, I think that you've got some issues, blah, blah, blah. And I just thought, it's just no talking to people. The only way you can do it is by showing them every time. It will be a peaceful protest.
I think the last question is a really vague question, but what change would you like to see?
Super easy. Equality. A more equitable future. Not just equality, equity as well. I think that's a word that a lot of people seem to forget sometimes, because there's a difference with equality. And I think that I want there to be a society where we're just like super chill and open and just like, you know, I want to see changes to the curriculum. I want to see changes to the way we're running our government. I want to see changes to housing, to supporting communities. You know, I want to see the fact that, you know, we don't have any more Islamophobia. We don't have any more transphobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, Afrophobia. Also, ableism. Look, basically, I'm just going to like reel it all off. Basically, every single protected characteristic that a human being has is, well, in fact, and truly protected, loved, and welcomed. And it seems really mushy-gushy, but I mean, like, this is what we were working towards, you know? I want to have a justice for the climate. I want us to make sure that we're actually taking responsibility, each and every one of us, and accountability for the change, the negative effects that we're having on this entire world. You know, I think that's a massive thing. And I think that the generation below us are really feeling that pressure, you know, that I'm working with young people and there is a massive amount of pressure on them, you know, more so than millennials. You know, millennials were like that push, but it was still in the distant future. And I think that Gen Z's come along and, you know, they've gone, but we need to take this up a notch. And I think that this is why maybe we're seeing an increase in when we're having demonstrations, that there is more, I don't want to say violence, because I feel like a lot of the violence is coming from the police at the end of the day, like hands down. Like as soon as the police interfere, like that's when it all kind of goes wrong. It's like, you know, if you know people have an issue with you, why would you show your face? You know, because I think if not most of them, all of the daytime ones have been like, you know, sorted. But anyway, where was I going with this?
Oh, the change that you would like to see.
Yeah, I think that the Gen Zers are having to become more assertive in the way they put across their messages, because quite clearly what we were doing before, people aren't listening. And it's that really horrible thing is, you know, like with the bill, I've seen loads of placards that say, if you take away the right to peaceful revolution, then violence becomes inevitable. Because the thing is that if you take away our right, and I know people are like, yeah, but it's the worst case scenario. Yeah, okay, happy days. Like they're just going to put restrictions on like they do for us now. But the thing is you're giving them more power to be able to kind of decide which ones they want to go forward. So if they were a completely open, unbiased institution, I would have no issues. In fact, no one would have any issues with that. But they're not unbiased. So the thing is that we know that whatever they choose to do is whatever they feel is, So and I just feel like this bill is just, it's the worst thing. It's the worst thing. And I don't think people understand how many things the government only listens to violence. This is the worst thing. They only listen to violence. How many peaceful protests were there last year? How many of you did you really hear about? None, because that's not the narrative they want. They want the narrative that we are looters, that we are violent, that we beat police officers, that we hurt people, you know, that we're killers and all of this stuff. That's the narrative that they're pushing. So if you're not doing anything that like goes with that narrative, you'll never hear about it. Mahmoud, right, died in January, and you never heard anything on the news apart from a little bit on local news, because it's not the narrative they want. But if BLM Cardiff started kicking up and burning stuff down, they know about Mahmoud Hassan then, you know. But yeah, so that's the change I want to see. I mean, am I going to say anti-capitalism? Yes, I am. I'm definitely thinking as to what I see as an individual, not necessarily Black Lives Matter Taunton, although I feel like that's kind of actually one of the things about BLM is that anti-capitalism. I want to see human beings being valued over money, hands down. I think that that's one of the biggest things that we need, a big shift. And I think, you know, that's where I'm at with what change I want to see.
I suppose it comes back to that, you said at the beginning that you've got that belief in fairness, that things should be fair. And I suppose, capitalism makes fairness quite difficult, doesn't it? So just everything needs to change.
There's everything, and I think this is the thing, unfortunately. It's like, you know, we've got people campaigning to change the curriculum. We want women to feel safe on our streets, you know, with Sarah Everard. But there are so many other women of colour before that, you know. And I think that's another thing that kind of grinds my gears quite a bit, is that we've been shouting that the police are violent for this last year, and it takes one woman who so happens to be white for you to notice, you know. And it's kind of really sad. But again, how are we supposed to have women safe on the streets? How are we supposed to make sure our children are being cared for in schools and are learning the right things? We can't just change one thing, one aspect. And this is the one thing, if you haven't seen the book by Lola Olufemi, it's called Feminism Interrupted. And basically, she talks about the fact that when you're a black woman or a black woman of color, you're at the bottom of the pile, right? So you're going to have your white men, you're going to have your white women, your black men, and then you're going to have your black women. And then you're also going to have the LGBTQ plus community, your trans women, right? So they're all going to be at the bottom of the pile. And the thing is that when you're constantly looking up from the bottom of the pile, and you've got some people just want to fight sexism, some people just want to fight racism. But the thing is you yourself as a woman of color have to fight both of them simultaneously and deal with the fact that most women tend to be like the nurturers of their communities, the backbone of their communities. If we look in the civil rights movement, especially, you know, black women, you know, they were at the front. If we look at Black Lives Matter, founded by 3 women. Every single group that I know in BLM is pretty much run by a woman, right? Because this is the thing. This is, you know, the power that we each have. We have that network. We have that ability to understand and see. And I think when you're sat at the bottom of the pile and you're looking up, you realize you can't just change one thing. You have to change all of it. Because how are you ever going to breed an environment, a sustainable environment for the new set of values that you want for your country, for your society, for your culture, in something that is just toxic? That's like me going into a stagnant pond and putting a flower. Like, it does nothing. Great, I put a flower in the pond. That's the worst analogy. No one worse I was going to say. But I was like, no. But do you know what I mean? Like, you're not changing anything. You need to take out all of the algae. You need to start giving it fresh water. Yeah. Maybe it needs a prune. Maybe it needs all of this. You can't just put a flower in the pond, you know? And I think this is what Lola Olufemi says, is that we have to be intersectional. Yeah. As women, as people, we need to be intersectional, because then you realize that, for example, it's like the environmental movement. You know, I've already said that, you know, there is a certain group of type of people that tend to do it, but then if we look at it as an intersectional thing, we'll notice how the environmental movement has been very whitewashed, and how that when we actually look at kind of climate change, the way they advertise climate change, why is it we only ever see white people in the documentaries? Why is it always a white dude in a documentary talking about climate change or talking about nature, right? Why is it that the places that they focus on are not like the coasts of Africa or the Caribbean, where the water is rising so much and people are starting to have to think about moving, that we're going to have climate emergency immigrants at some point? We're not looking at that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, look at the Amazon and the, you know, and the rainforest. It's like, yeah, but there are so many other places. And again, it's like feeds into this anti-Black narrative that we're not going to pay attention to this. And I think that someone coined this term Afrophobia, and I think that so sums up so well. It's, you know, anything that is of descent from Africa, it's we try and ignore it, you know, but I think looking at everything intersectionally, we understand that everything needs to change. And I don't know where. I don't know what my recommendations are. All I'm going to say is we're going to keep fighting for what we think is right, and we're just going to keep doing it every single day until someone comes up with a plan. Which is probably going to be us women.
Probably, yeah. Well, hopefully, because nobody's come up with anything yet, have they? Really? You know, no, it's always just a case of chipping away.
And it's going to take hundreds of years. I think this is the sad thing, is the fact that, you know, it's taken us 400 years to get to this point. It's taken 400 years to get to this point. So it's like, okay, we're at this point now. So like maybe another 4. I think this is something else that's important with a lot of movements as well. In this case, especially race equality movements and also like Black Lives Matter, is that trying to make sure that we create a sustainable movement so that there is a succession plan.
Mm.
Because I think that what happens is it's almost like we pick up the torch from the previous generation, we burn the torch, and then it's like quiet. But there's no, like, when I was younger, growing up in Taunton, like, you know, I came from a school in Reading where, like, you know, it was just diversity everywhere. It was wonderful. And so I kind of came here and realized that all of the race equality work that was happening here, Somerset Racial Equality Council, there was the African Caribbean other council, there was lots and lots. And so I was really lucky that when I was like bullied at school, when I was having to deal with crap at home, when I was having to be like subjected to racist comments and things like that, there are organizations in place to support me from moving from one school to the next school, right? They supported me the whole way through it. There were community groups where I could hang out with other people who are black and mixed. Like, you know, we got funding and we got to do amazing projects. And then one of those projects, we got to go to Ghana and present the project. Like with, I think it was with this really cool guy called Sean Sobers. Anyway, yeah, so he's awesome. But my point is that now nothing's changed. All of that's gone. The funding's gone, and it hasn't made any other steps in the area. And so we need to make sure we are creating something that has a succession, so that when I pass the torch to the next people, they don't have to, because we're currently working from scratch at this point. So we need to make sure they're not working from scratch and they already have a foundation and a platform to work from. They just build it up a bit more. And that is, I think, the way that we're going to just slowly chip away. The more we chip, the more we build, the more we chip, the more we build. And I think, you know, I think that's probably going to be how it's going to go.
Yeah, sounds tiring, doesn't it?
I'm like, where's my rum? I need to drink already.
Yeah. God, it's a lot of work.
Right.